I'm Cyclon, and today I want to talk about risk mapping, why it is so powerful, what variants exist and their upsides and downsides, and a few little nuances that you should be aware of if you want to do risk mapping. So, we're gonna be starting with why risk mapping is so powerful in this league. Every league, we have one way or another to bypass the normal limit of how much loot we can get in our maps. Normally, we are limited by the amount of quantity of we can roll on our map, by the passive tree having limited passive points, and by us having limited scarab spots. Now, this league, compared to other leagues, we have the risk scarab. In previous league, we had things like Wandering Path, Back to Basics, or All Flames that all resulted in their form of absurdity of loot. And this league, it is the risk scarab that results in absurdity of loot. And the reason for that is that the risk scarab bypasses the normal limit of maps. Maps are a premier way of choosing your map, the map modifier specifically. So if you normally roll a map at T16, it can roll some quantity, it can get some rarity, and there are some map mods that are acting like a downside, but actually are upside, like finding more rares in your map, rares having more modifiers, and those mods are neat. But then we have T17 mods, which have not just their downsides, but can also give you additional upsides, like more currency, more scarabs, or more maps. So these T17 mods are very powerful. Now this league introduced two things. They introduced 16.5 maps, which are originator influenced maps that are able to roll T17 mods while being T16 mods. And we have the Risk Scarab. The Risk Scarab got buffed from giving us one additional mods to two additional mods. Now this is only a slight buff, but it is double the effectiveness. And now the best we could get theoretically would be a T17 with 18 modifiers. Now that is really neat, but we actually don't want to go that far because those mods are actually very, very rippy. So what we do instead is we go for 2 to 3 risk scarabs, and then we choose a league mechanic of our choice to funnel this through. Now the league mechanics that are premier for it are Blight, Breach, and Abyss. And the reason for those is that they're all very efficient in the passive points you need to spend on those to gain enough content out of this that you have enough stuff in your map, be it Horde, be it the Blight lanes, be it the breaches, that you have enough enemies to kill, enough boxes to open to get your loot out of those juiced up risk maps. And with this, we now have the way to funnel the loot in this league, and we have the way to scale the loot in this league. Now we just need to figure out what way to funnel it is the best. And I already said there are three variations to this risk mapping at the moment. I want to start with Breach. Breach is most likely the most powerful of the three, however, it is also the most difficult. Breach, in combined with Beyond, results in some absurd amount of enemies in your maps. So many enemies that if you don't kill them fast enough, if you don't have enough damage, enough clear, and enough coverage, you will just get swarmed by so many enemies you can't even blink before you're dead. So it's a very, very powerful strategy. However, it is extremely deadly and it requires a very, very much tuned build to it. Not only need you to avoid the normal T17 mods, you also need to specifically have a build that is able to clear those breaches at an insane pace. Now, we have another option, which is Blight. Now, Blight on its own, if you just compare Blight to Abyss, isn't really that much better than Abyss. However, Blight has one bonus point for it, and that it is hybrid variations to a Rarity farm. Blight can be forced to spawn a lot of bosses, and those bosses are unique enemies, allowing us to use this Titanic Scrap and Titanic Scrap of Legends to suddenly make, instead of just getting a lot of generic loot like we do with Abyss or Breach, also scale the rarity of the enemies and make them actually drop a lot of uniques. Now, just like Breach, Blight in this way requires a specific build for it. Not only do you need to avoid the T17 mods, you also need a build with massive single target damage and enough tankiness to stand still on those blights. Because when those blight lanes spawn, all these enemies swarm you, again, that the game is not able to really keep up with it. It's gonna get laggy, it's gonna get visual issues, and if you stand still and you need to survive all these onslaught of the blight enemies on top of the map mods of the T17 modifiers like meteors, volatile cores, droning orbs, and you just need to stand there and somehow survive all this. But if you do, there's a lot of loot at the end, a lot of rares, a lot of uniques, and a lot of generic loot. So again, just like Breach, Abyss has its strong side, but has its very specific build. And this brings us finally to Abyss. And Abyss actually doesn't have any big requirements for you. You need to use a caster mastery. The caster masteries are all spread across the top of the tree, so if you can reach any of those caster masteries, Abyss is suddenly a viable strategy for you. You don't need to be a caster build, I'm a tech build, and I've been blasting at least 200 Abyss maps at this point, and I had no issues opening those hordes by just using any spell. I don't have as much cast speed as those caster builds, but it's still more than fine. So why is Abyss this simple? Well, in Blight, we are scaling the amount of bosses we see, we scale the amount of enemies we see. In Breach, we scale the amount of enemies we see, we scale the amount of beyond enemies we see, and just filling their screen with enemies. In Abyss, we are doing neither of that. We just put abysses in our maps, and we run behind the abysses when we click on the hordes or use a caster mastery to open the hordes. And now we get our loot. Meaning that Abyss' strong point compared to the others two is that we are not scaling the enemies, we are scaling the map. So we scale the map, we get as much loot out of our map possible, we follow the abysses, we get the loot from the hordes, which are affected by the more currency, the more scarab, the quantity, and the rarity of the map. So we just have our loot in a very simplistic way, and all we need to deal with are the T17 mods and normal rares in those T17s. Now, Abyss monsters are slightly harder than some T17 rares, but they are definitely manageable if you can manage the T17 mods. Bringing us to the final conclusion that if your build is highly optimized, Breach might just be the best. If you have Rarity, a strong single target damage, and a very tanky build, Blight might just be the best. But for most builds that want to get into T17 mapping, Abyss is the way to go. And the reason for that is you just need to cover the basics. You need to get some sort of reflect immunity, you need to get a decent amount of tankiness, and you need to find a way to ignore reduced action speed. So it could be a balance of terror, it could be the Trickster Sensi, it could be the Juggernaut Sensi, and you're good to go on risk mapping. I wanted to quickly mention a few things I noticed about risk mapping that I think are important to understand to be able to do it properly and in an efficient manner. The first thing is what mods you really want to be immune to. You want to be reflect immune in some way or another. You do not want to worry about reflect maps, it happens way too often, and don't underestimate fist reflect if you have a build that is normally just elemental damage. Even just a little of fist damage can actually kill you if you had too many enemies at once. So you want to be general avoiding reflect immune both boss fizz and crit. A few ways to do that is you convert your fizz to elemental damage and use awaken elemental damage with attacks. You use the masteries on the tree, or you use a flask mod, which you can now craft on flask with a mage blood. Another mod you do need to be immune to is action speed reduction. You can do this with a balance of terror, with the Trickster Sensi, or you can do it with a Juggernaut Sensi. You just need to be somehow immune to action speed reduction. There's also Garb of the Ephemeral, or how that one is called, the Cortex Body Armor, which you can equip on your Mercenary or Animate Guardian. Just action speed reduction can really easily kill you because you're so slow that you can react to other things. Next is a mod that is not per se bricking, but you really want to avoid. Volatile Cores is out of all the T17 mods, the one I hate the most to meet. Whenever I see Volatile Cores, the map becomes so much more hectic, so much more annoying, so much more bothersome. While you just theoretically need to avoid those, when you started doing a Blight, where you need to stand still, kill the enemies because you're just lagging. You're in a breach, you encounter enemies, you just start lagging. You're following an abyss, it spawns 5 rares, you kill those, and suddenly there are 5 volatiles you need to dodge, while also trying to run the map in an efficient manner and loot and everything. It is just annoying. It's the one mod I really want to avoid. It is really annoying, it's really bothersome, and I just dislike it, and I really recommend avoiding it at any cost. If you randomly get it with Whisker, it doesn't actually happen that often. I think in my fifth set of 50 T17 so far, I've seen Volatile Cores on my map once. And I'm using 2 to 3 Whiskers per map. It isn't too common that you get it, and it is avoidable when you have it randomly. But if you also have it on your maps rolled, it does roll commonly on maps. It doesn't appear commonly with the Risk Scarabs. Lastly, I want to talk about how you should consider running your maps. You don't really have to rush the boss. You don't have to find all the Ether altars first. I feel like in the current state of the league, you do the mechanics as you see them. If you run the map for Blight, what I would do, I run through the map in a leisurely manner and just see everything once, kill the boss, and after that I go and do the Blight. If I'm doing breaches, I do the breach, the first breach I see, I run into the breach, I do the breach close, I go for the next breach. And with abysses, I try to do one abyss at a time. You could theoretically juggle 2 abysses, but it is really tedious, it is really annoying, and I do not like it. And if you die, you risk losing 2 abysses. I would only do 1 abyss at a time, but I would try to do the abysses as you see them. If you're running T17s, it is good if you can kill the map boss, but if the map's rolled too annoying or you die, it is okay. It doesn't hurt too much as long as you got your loot from your abyss, from your breach, from your blight out of the map. You usually already made enough with the map that killing the map boss, the fragments you get from them are negligible. They're really good if you can do it, and you should attempt to do it. But if the boss takes too long or just kills you over and over, you can skip it. It is okay. Now, all this being said, I hope this video was informative. If you enjoyed it, I would appreciate a thumbs up and a comment. It does help with the algorithm. It does help my video reach more people. It is enjoyable and helpful for. And all this being said, any questions as usual, comment section, Twitch, Discord. All this being said, have a lovely day, and I'll be seeing you either on my next video or live on Twitch. Goodbye.